time. I appreciate it. I know this is the last one, and you got the event tonight, so we'll respect your time here. Talk a little bit, if you don't mind, about the marketing side right now and some of the struggles maybe that's happening in New York City, you know, in the shadow, if you will, of a lot of the other teams that are in this area.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the age-old question just about soccer in this country, I think, you know, like how do we raise the profile of soccer? It's not just a NYCFC or a New York market, it's how do we all collectively raise the profile of the sport in this country? And it's, to me, it's a kind of in some ways, a long-term aspirational, like we have a mission statement at the club here is to build New York City into one of the soccer capitals of the world. And, you know, some people are like, you know, when I say that, they think, oh, good luck, or that, and I say, hey, well, it's not gonna happen next year, you know, and this is an aspirational kind of long-term thing. But I have kind of introduced within the club a more of a short-term kind of goal of the club, which I think is very reasonable and attainable, which is to build NYCFC into the undisputed flagship team of Major League Soccer. And I think that you know, you can't do that without having a home, you know, for your team. But like when we have that, I think that being in this market on the heels of a World Cup, and going back to, you know, the initial question, you know, the World Cup is something that, you know, we all fully believe is going to be rocket fuel for the sport in this country, and then I think it's driven out in this market. And so between that, and then you combo that at the same time with stadium, World Cup stadium, boom, boom, 1-2 punch. You know, we think that, you know, our stadium in New York City, in the 5 boroughs of New York City and Queens, is going to be a destination spot for club soccer teams all over the world, the biggest clubs in the world. When they come and tour the U.S., they want to play in New York. They want to play a proper stadium in New York. Like you can play an NFL stadium or a baseball stadium, but if you want to play a proper, you know, stadium, like, if you're Barcelona, you're Madrid, you're Juventus, you're Bayern, you're Chelsea, you're Man City, whoever it is, like this is the place. Like you want to play in New York City, you want to play in a real soccer stadium in New York City, like you're going to come play here. U.S. men's national team, U.S. women's national team, friendlies, competitive games, you know, World Cup qualifying, all those kind of things. We feel like we're going to be the biggest, you know, and most attractive market. And that helps build us and helps build New York City into one of the soccer capitals of the world by having kind of the cathedral of soccer in the 5 boroughs. So I think that's a short term. You know, that to me, that's that's a 2026, 27, you know, like type of thing. And then that's a launching pad to really help elevate the sport in this market. And you know, to your point, like how do we compete with other sports in the market? It's not, to me, it's not how does NYCFC compete with the other major sports teams from the other 4 major professional sports in the market. Is how does soccer compete with the other 4 major sports in this market? And to me, we're incrementally growing that and gaining ground every year, and then we're going to get that rocket fuel in 26, and we'll really jump it up in this market combined with stadium. I think we'll really be onto something. But in the meantime, you know, our focus is incrementally growing year on year, and some of the metrics, KPIs I look at for that is our city membership base, our season ticket base. It's something that from year one, and which is not, by the way, not uncommon in professional sports teams, but you launch year one, and then over time decrease. And our goal last year was kind of, we drew a line in the sand and saying we need to stop the bleeding, and we want to grow that, and we did. And we had the first kind of year-over-year increase that we've had ever since the inaugural year in city membership. And this year we've already beaten last year's number and are continuing to grow. So very proud about that. Partnership, you know, sponsorship, same. When I started here in 2019, I think we had 32 partners. Last year we had 45. This year I think we'll have 50 probably in terms of corporate partners, and then also kind of a comparable revenue growth as, you know, alongside the you know, number of partners growth. Our youth programs, and we talk about from a marketing standpoint, really grassroots, like kids and getting kids like locked in on soccer and in our brand. Our camps and clinics business and things like that is something that has grown since 2019. Again, we essentially didn't do any in 2020 for obvious reasons, but from 2019 to 2022, we've grown almost 6x, and we're we're budgeting and planning for, growth again, another like 10% growth in 2023. So kind of those are the KPIs that I look at. They're not in our sport, they're not in our market, in our sport, not a hockey stick yet. I think that the 26, 27, there's a good chance to be kind of that hockey stick growth. But I'm proud that we are growing all the right kind of KPIs, and growing fans, growing followers, and on our social media networks, on our email databases, et cetera, et cetera. All those things are pointing up, and we got to just keep hacking. It's like hand-to-hand combat. I tell these guys, we got 130 people. We got a group back here. We got 80 people in here today, and we got a group in the back. Our ticketing team, they're making calls all day, every day, and talking to fans, talking to new fans, talking to people who come to one game and about their experiences, trying to talk to them about coming out the opening day, coming out buying city memberships. It's a hand-to-hand every single every day. But I love that. I love that because it's like you're spreading the gospel, and it's working, and it's going to continue to work.
I just want to follow up on that as far as like growing the game and growing everything. One of the things we've lost a lot this year is we've lost a lot of players this year.
Yeah.
And so exactly. So do you feel that the stadium has anything to do with that? Has there been any focus on like so much focus on the stadium that we've not been able to replace those players at the rate that you want to replace them at? Or
no, absolutely not.
Is the new stadium a selling point for players coming in?
Yeah, I think if anything, it's almost the opposite. So like I think that we, as I mentioned before, like our metrics are up. We're getting more fans. We're getting more sponsors. We're driving more revenue. And essentially, what our role in looking at the team is, we know that we knew that we're kind of building to almost a natural. You obviously hope that it's not going to be to the extent that it was, but almost kind of get to a point where you're a victim of your own success. Like, when we have, you have successful teams, we're in a salary cap league, and it's a very, it's a very hard cap league. The cap hasn't grown very much in the last couple of years due to CBA and COVID and kind of keeping things flat and like small increases. So, we have players that have contractual increases in their contracts, and then usually when you're really good and winning an MLS Cup and getting a conference final and getting, Champions League semifinal and winning Campeones Cup, and to be able to have that kind of success, it usually means that you've got good players, and when you have really good players who have a lot of success, like, they typically want either a lot more money to keep doing things, or they want to find a new challenge and a new project. And so, and every kind of situation is a little bit different, but unfortunately, you can't really accommodate all those things and keep everyone together indefinitely. And it's kind of just part of the system we're in. Obviously, you don't want to lose 10 or 12 guys, in one off season. But it gives us a new opportunity. We've get a new core of guys and help and grow kind of a new cycle. And the guys that we have, we love. Like we feel like we have great players on the team now, on the squad. And we're gonna continue to add to that in the coming days, weeks, and months. Days, weeks, and months. And so yeah, I think generally, I don't want to say it's a strategy per se, but I would say one thing that's really been impressive to me about our team that we've had here, about our sporting director Dave Lee, and our coaching staff, and been super excited to have Nick here for a whole off season, preseason, be able to see what he can do. But like the kind of patience and discipline, I think, has been like a key for NYCFC to be able to find the right kind of players, or the right that kind of fit our system, fit our culture, that are good in the locker room, that are good, that are good in the community, that are like the right type of people, and the right type of players for us. Over, and not saying like we just have to fill out a team by January 10th every year. And some teams do that, and I'm not saying that our way is better and that way is worse. Like, but some teams, like, we got to have our entire squad by day one of preseason, and that's fine. But I think some of the best signings we've made over the last couple of years, whether that's Talas Magno, Santi Rodriguez, Gabby Pereira, and I'm sure there's other examples. I think our guys that came in March, April, I think said it was later even, but like, and so it's but it's like finding the right players and right opportunities at the time. It's not like there's guys that like we have guys identified in January, like we'll just wait until March or April to sign them. It's like that we're not doing that, I can promise you. So so yeah, these guys we've had a great team here in New York. We've got a great, I think we have a competitive advantage with the CFG, kind of global scouting network and things like that. And so ultimately, it's a long season. Like I was telling someone the other day, I said, I watch I watch NFL and I can't remember there's some segment like on ESPN on Mondays they call it Overreaction Monday, and I'm just like we had Overreaction Sunday, I think, after our game on Saturday, just like it's like the sky is falling, like oh my gosh, like we lost, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like there is literally 8 more months of regular season, not of like a total season, like it's February. The last regular season game is October 21st. So we have 8 more months. That is a long time. And we've only played 1 of 34 games. And, for us, it's, you want to finish strong. We've seen it like kind of the last 2 years. It's kind of the teams who are full strength and hot late are the teams that go deep and win. And so it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Right, going back towards that question, I understand that a soccer club needs the right players, the right groups, but like given that sometimes people want to see stars or like big names, do you think that the club, I understand that the plan is to go towards 2026 and build with the right people, do you think the club has like gone away from the idea of like bringing back another big name like before?
Yeah, good question. I think as it stands over the last couple of years, the focus has been on winning, and we feel like you can draw fans one of 2 ways. One is big names, well there's more than 2 ways, but like if you want to take big buckets, big names, winning. And I think a lot of people make the mistake of assuming that big names also equals winning, and it doesn't. I mean, if you look at it, a lot of the big name signings over, not a lot of them have won trophies or and for us, I remember we had obviously big names early on. And every year that one of them dropped off, we actually got better the next year. And then like my first year, in doing media, the first was first year after Villa was gone. I was like, what are you going to do now? Like your team is going to be terrible. You lost Villa, one of the best players in the league. And then like we ended up being first in the East and having our best points total ever, and then you lose some guys, and now what's gonna it's kind of like each year is that whoever you lose, now what are you gonna do? How are you gonna come back? And I think that we've proven that we've found a good strategy and proved to be able to win consistently. Now the argument is like, is that going to draw as many fans? Now in the near term, I would say maybe not. But we're making a bet that fans will, in the long run, care more about following and supporting a consistent winner than a team that every couple of years, signs a 37-year-old with a lot of name recognition, and it's fun to say, and sells a bunch of shirts and that kind of stuff. But like, now, I'm also not going to say that we'll never do that again, but the focus, that hasn't really been a focus. Our focus is, and it's been, I think, kind of obvious. Some people is young, investing in our academy, investing in young players, like using the U22 initiative to the absolute fullest, using signing DPs that are younger rather than older, and like and trying to grow talents here, and have fan favorites that our fans can really care about, and people who are fans of the club can really be excited about and proud of.
Well, so you were talking about how you want for NYCFC to be the major club in MLS. So a big club, and by a big club, the definition is that you have a fan base that is large, and the fan base expects you to be in it and compete and win. How do you do that, and how do you develop that? And there's a more pointed part of this question. The Forbes article that came out last month about the valuation of all the MLS teams also had the operational budget of
Yeah.
of every team, and even though it's a guesstimate,
Yeah.
you know,
You took the words out of my mouth before you.
yeah, no, I'm sure that you didn't go and
Yeah.
write a number and slide it over to the
No,
reporter
we
for us.
did not. Unless
Um,
Sam did not.
Yeah, but NYCFC, according to that article, is operating at a loss of about $11 million a year, and that lines up with the previous article that they published a few years ago. And I would imagine that while that's not necessarily an accurate number, it's not totally not an accurate, or it's not an inaccurate number.
Yeah.
So how do you turn this into a big club and make this a big club? Keeping in mind that if you do have a stadium, then I'm sure that one of the biggest expenses that you have, which would be paying rent and also probably sharing the revenue off of food and beverage,
Yeah.
you know, you'll be able to go and keep that. You know, so,
Yeah, no, I mean,
sure.
the economics of the economics for us in our stadium, like our business plan and the economics versus where we are now is night and day. I mean, it's not even remotely close. Like owning your own and running your own facility versus being a tenant. And this is true, and you know, even from kind of, you know, spending 15 plus years in the NBA, like teams are tenants versus teams that ran and, you know, and owned and operated their own building. Night and day difference in terms of, like, you know, the control, the revenues, the ability to sell sponsorship, the ability to sell, you know, from a food and beverage standpoint. You know, there's the list goes on and on, from mostly revenue, you know, and now expense wise, you know, we'll pay a rent. We'll be paying a rent to the city, but you know, instead of to, you know, the Yankees or the Mets, but then you take on a lot more operational. You know, like our rent in Citi Field and Yankee Stadium covers the vast majority of, not all, but the vast majority of kind of the operational components of putting on the event. Whereas we'll take all that in-house, including like more staff and headcount, and, like, you know, there's a lot more that goes into that. But the revenues are drastic. And so, you know, so that's one piece about it in terms of, like, how do you make the club big, is having a home, and you get one chance to launch a club. You get usually only maybe one or two chances over a long period of time, usually one, to launch a building, you know, and it's like a chance for like a full, almost like a rebrand, a relaunch of the entire franchise of like who we are and what we're about. There's things that we'll be able to do there that we can't do now, like things like fan rituals and you know, pre-game things that where, you know, like, you know, the teams have the luxury of doing cool things like that we can't do, aren't allowed to do, don't have the space to do, don't have, you know, set up, and so there's like the fan experience is going to be so much better. The whole, everything about it is different. It makes the club, I think, gives you the opportunity to really build the club. Again, it's almost like a complete, like, kind of relaunch of the franchise at that point. So it's super exciting, a lot of work, but really, really exciting. Fans, I think people are going to be attracted about coming to a cathedral of soccer in the 5 boroughs of New York City that has never existed ever in the history of the city. And so that's going to be a draw. Like, so in fact, like right now, the draw to come to our games is to watch soccer, you know. And I think you know, the draw there is going to be great soccer and a great in a kind of an unmatched, unrivaled fan experience, and a building and a cathedral of soccer in the city that hasn't existed before. And so that, I think, in and of itself allows us to grow fans. We're looking at a capacity of 25,000, so it's like only so, like, and we expect it to be jam-packed. So, but how is that a big club? I think it makes us a big club. I don't think it's a matter of having 25 or 30 or 30, like how many fans you have. It's the fact, it's what the experience is. It's what people feel when they're there. It's the fact that it's New York City. And so whether it's NYCFC against Philadelphia Union, or it's Man City against Barcelona, or it's U.S. women's national team against, you know, against Canada or China or whoever, you know, wherever, it's like whoever it is, like, it's, you're playing cathedral soccer in New York City, and that continues to, like, kind of build upon itself with the more big events, the more things you do there, the more, you know, hoisting trophies, winning, you know, having special events, and whether MLS All-Star Game, whatever it is, like all these kind of things that we're gonna have there. So all of those things, I think, will build us to be bigger. I think also geographically, Queens, being in the most diverse borough, and maybe arguably in one of the most diverse places in like anywhere in the world, and just how like endemic soccer is to the culture in Queens. I think it's going to help organically grow a fan base there. I think geographically it really opens up Long Island, which is a big soccer hotbed that has been, I think, challenged for us to make a lot of inroads, and just geographically getting the Yankee Stadium from Long Island is a piece of cake to get to Queens, while not hurting any of our fan bases in Westchester County or Connecticut or Brooklyn or Manhattan or anywhere else. So there's just a ton of upside. By the way, I will say that I know it says we lose money, but I think it also showed that almost most teams do. Like most teams in the article, like the vast majority, and borderline all, and I think that is okay, because it's a growth sport. When I worked in NBA and I was in the league office, as recent as 10 years ago, before I guess maybe 11, 12 years ago, before a radical change in the collective bargaining agreement, and before a massive change in kind of broadcast landscape and for broadcast revenues, 2/3 to 3/4 of NBA teams lost more money than that. And that was only 10, 12 years ago. And so, you look at kind of the trajectory that soccer's on in this country, and kind of going like where it's going. To me, it's investing. I mean, Amazon lost money for many years. Like right. And that's it's just this is ownership and the league are investing in the league. They're investing in players. They're doing things that are going to help grow the league, and it's a long play. Everyone who's getting this, they're playing the long game, and that is hugely important. Because if we had owners that were not thinking long term, then I would question the ability to kind of reach the heights and the dreams that we have as a club, or that any other clubs have. But they're not. Like every one of these clubs, everyone's playing the long game, and they believe in the sport, and they know it's gonna, and that's why you're seeing the valuations where they are. Because a lot of people are like, how can you have a team that loses 11 million, maybe be worth 800 million? Doesn't make sense. But it's because of where it's going, and kind of betting on the future.
9 minutes left.
We do have 9 minutes left. Okay. So, is there anything specific you mentioned before about the overreaction fans?
Yeah.
Do you have anything you want to say to them right now?
Yeah. Relax. No, I mean, what was that? I wish those shirts that keep calm and carry on, or whatever. Like maybe get one of those. I think no. You know what? I take it back. I don't want any of our fans to relax, because I love that the passion and like that soccer fans bring. It's just different for me from any other sport, and so like don't change is, I guess, but realize that we're going to be, in my opinion, like I feel like we're going to be bringing in more players. They're going to be good. We're going to be good. And I think and our expectations don't change. I mean, I think sometimes I feel like people think I'm BSing them when I say that. Like they're like, oh, you lose all these players. I'm like, what are your expectations for this year? Like it's the same as they were last year, and the year before. That's to compete for championships and be top of the East, and that's the expectation, And it's a long season. So like I said before, 8 months. I mean, to me, I'm not. Would I rather have won on Saturday? Of course, but it's a long year, and we fully believe we're gonna be good. I think you guys are gonna be excited when we start bringing some of these players in.
One thing I had a question about, what's changed this year is there's the big Apple TV league-wide change. You've gone from the S Network to Apple TV. How much control do you guys have over the content that you create? Is it better? Is it worse getting messages, getting content out to fans that way?
Yeah. So. Couple things on that. So one is, Apple deal is Apple partnership is I'm super bullish on it, and very, very excited about. And I think even though I was in the stadium and not watching our game on broadcast like on Saturday. Like I watched some of the other games, you know, kind of after our game, just to curious to see the broadcast quality. That I watched a replay of our game just again to see the broadcast quality, and I was very impressed. Like, I mean, especially for a week one, like I was expecting, you know, more kind of growing pains and things like that. And like, I mean, it lives up to Apple kind of standards. I mean, it's slick. Like, I mean, just crisp, you know, great broadcast quality. And so, you know, really excited about that in terms of content. And I think it's kind of been widely reported that there was some minimum requirements of teams from a content creation standpoint, which, you know, maybe annoyed or frustrated some teams. But I think on the flip side, to me, it was more of like a kick in the pants to be like, guys, you know, sports teams now are media companies or content companies. Like you know, that's like what we are. I mean, they're only, you know, 1% of fans that we have in our ecosystem that follow us on social media or that we have emails or like whatever. Like we have like 1% of them actually attend our games. You know, the rest of the other 99% like consume us in other ways. They consume us on our social media channels, they consume us on our website, they consume us on our app, they consume you guys on podcasts and on the articles that are written and all the analytics and they're out there that you guys are doing and that others are doing. Like that's the other 99%. That's how they're consuming NYCFC, and so like we need to lean into that. Like and also that it's opportunity from, you know, quite frankly, commercial. I'm also always thinking about these things, you know, through a commercial lens. It's a commercial opportunity to lean in that. The more content you can create, the sticky your content is, and the more people are staying, you know, on your channels and spending time, you know, they're getting sponsor messages. We're able to monetize that. Our numbers are better. Like it all kind of just, you know, works symbiotically. So it's, to me, at the beginning, and again, some of it also was like we had some, quite frankly, some late notice in terms of like hey, oh, by the way, like, you know, 6 weeks from now, like you need to have all this stuff, and we're like, oh crap, but we hired, we're in the process. I said I've hired 4 incremental heads for content creation, and really, and to me, that's just gonna mean it's gonna be more content creation for our academy, more for NYCFC 2, more for our first team, and you know, ultimately, I think that it's going to be great for fans, and if it's great for fans, then you know, at some point you're able to monetize that as well. So.
The last time we talked was in November of 2021. It was a memorable interview because you said at the time that you felt optimistic about our chances in the playoffs, and that went well. And you also said that you hope to share some good news about the stadium soon, that you were working on some things.
Yeah.
So, in that tradition,
I got within a year, I guess, of the second one, right?
Yeah.
I made it so that, isn't that the statute of limitations?
No, you were working on things.
Yeah.
So in that spirit, what kind of statement could you make? What kind of like mysterious, vague, oracular?
Oh boy, good question. You know, I guess I would say that, you know, building the stadium is obviously priority number 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, and we have a process to go through. We're not formally approved as kind of everyone knows. We got a 12 to 18 month process where we're going to have, you know, we're looking forward to meaningful dialogue with community leaders, community boards, borough boards, and we're so fortunate that we have such great support from Mayor Adams and Councilmember Moya and Borough President Richards, and the list goes on and on and on. So I feel great about that. But I guess to your question is, I would say like we're not done building. That's not the only building we want to do or the only growing we want to do as a club. You know, I think that you know, we talk about, we haven't had this home for our first team, but we have a second team that, you know, started play last year in MLS Next Pro, and we feel like we have a temporary home at St. John's. We have great partners at St. John's. We love the relationship we have there because it's also the current home of our academy, but it's not the long-term plan for MLS Next Pro. It's not the long-term plan for our academy. Like we need, you know, we endeavor to have a campus, you know, that where you can have a first team and the second team and academy all under the same roof. So, you know, that's something else that you know, and I can't, I won't put a timeline on it because it's, you know, first and foremost, the focus is on the ULURP process and stadium approval and moving forward with that. But that's something I think we need to again elevate the club to the next level is having the facilities, the right facilities from a player development standpoint. We have a great facility in Orangeburg now, and for our City Football Academy that was built in 2018, but it was built for one team. There's one locker room, there's 1.5 pitches, there's one, you know, like everything there's one of, you know, it's built for one team. And, you know, we really need a space that can be built for first team and second team and all of our academy teams together. And, you know, and then also, you know, the other thing is women's football. And I think, you know, we're bullish on women's football. We've been bullish on women's football. We have one of the best women's football teams in the world from a City Football Group standpoint with Manchester City Women. City Football Group also, our team in Girona has a women's team, or Melbourne has a women's team, Montevideo has a women's team. I'm probably missing some others, but it's something that's kind of like core to who we are as a company. That's something that we plan to have. You know, for me, you know, so we need a facility. We need to figure out what the long-term plan is for where NYCFC 2 plays. To me, we want them. I would want them to be a commercially viable, standalone, marketable entity with a name that's not NYCFC 2. That is its own kind of brand that can be a standalone, commercial viable, which means playing somewhere in a facility that is kind of fit for purpose for that, that's appropriate for that level of play. 2,500 to 7,000, depending on the kind of market, somewhere nearby, but like, you know, but probably not in Queens when we have our first team in Queens. And you know, and then women's, you know, but you know, for women's, you know, I think there's demand for. I think the women's team could play in our big stadium, could play with the men's stadium. But to be able to do that, you have to do it right and launch a team right. Like you have to give yourself the proper runway to sell and monetize, and which would mean, you know, from my standpoint, that there's a level of urgency of trying to figure that out. So there's a lot of stuff going on. Like you know, we got to build it. We got to figure out a stadium for the first team. We got to figure out a stadium for the second team. We got to figure out a training facility for everybody in a permanent kind of home for our academy. We got to figure out women's football. So everyone kind of thinks, you know, there's one thing that the eye is on the prize of the stadium, you know, which it is, but there's a lot more to come to kind of ultimately reach and kind of fulfill, I think, the promise of New York City Football Club and what will be 5 years, 8 years, 10 years from now. You know?
Good answer.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, guys.
Thank you.
Good.
Thanks so much, you guys.
No, thank you.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate it.